Imagine this. You're sitting in a small cafe. Soft golden light spilling over a wooden table. The scent of roasted coffee gently weaving through the air. In the corner of the room, a man sits alone. He's not glued to his phone, nor is he trying to draw attention. Instead, he's quiet, as if listening to something only he can hear. There's a strange pull about him, but not the kind you see in glossy magazines. It doesn't come from a perfect face or a calculated smile. It comes from his presence, from the way he sits there, and somehow slows down the whole room. People often think men are drawn to surface things, like a seductive figure, a charming smile, or a few clever mind games. That might be true on a shallow level, but the men who have lived long enough, who have loved and lost, no longer fall for such tricks. For them, surrender comes from something else entirely. The sense that standing before them is a woman who has already chosen herself. A woman who doesn't need to be validated, who doesn't chase after being chosen, because she has already made that choice on her own. And it's in that grounded energy that men finally let their guard down. I remember an old friend, Daniel. After a broken marriage, he shut his heart tightly, convinced that nothing could move him again. Until one day, at a class reunion, he bumped into someone from the past. She wasn't the most striking woman in the room. Her clothes were simple, her smile gentle, nothing loud or flashy. But Daniel told me, the moment she walked in, something shifted in his breath. She wasn't trying to impress, wasn't trying to prove anything. She was simply there, fully. I didn't need to choose her, he said. She had already chosen herself. That's something you can't fake. You can't learn it from a list of seduction tips or dating tactics. It has to come from within. From the truth that this woman is at home in her own skin, and that is what grown men cannot resist. They don't surrender to an image. They surrender to a presence. True desire can't be manufactured like a recipe. It's not in the 10 steps to make him obsessed or in perfectly crafted messages. That kind of desire can't be made. It can only be embodied. A mature man won't respond to pretense. He's seen enough illusions to know what's real and what's just play. What he's searching for is not fleeting attraction, but a connection that reaches the deepest part of who he island. Carl Jung once wrote, "The female soul contains in its unconscious the image of the man, and the male soul contains the image of the woman. Each of us carries within us a primal image, an unintegrated part, and we are drawn to those who, without knowing, awaken that missing part." Desire doesn't rise simply from what someone has, but from how they reflect what we have hidden inside ourselves. When a man sees in you the part he longs to integrate, the fire of desire ignites. I remember once talking to an old man, well into his 60s. He told me about his late wife, his eyes lit with remembrance. When I met her, it wasn't her looks that captured me. It was the feeling that she didn't need me. And because of that, I wanted to be beside her for life. He paused, then smiled to himself, as if whispering to his own soul, "The greatest attraction is not when someone runs after you, but when they can stand alone and still look at you with tenderness." Desire doesn't come from lack. It arises from freedom. A man doesn't want to be tied down. He wants to be invited. And a woman who knows how to stand strong on her own is the most powerful invitation of all. Here lies the first secret. True desire is not about what you do. It's about who you are. A mature man isn't looking for perfection. He's looking for truth. He craves the kind of safety that doesn't come from weakness, but from the strength that is uniquely yours. And this opens the first key: mental nicknames. They are not magic phrases or flattery. They are the way you, in a quiet moment, name the qualities that men carry but are rarely seen for. The world almost never says to a man, "I admire your calm," or "I feel your quiet strength." But when you say it, with truth, not from need, something lights up inside him. And that fire is not just the fire of the body, but of the soul, of connection. The difference is clear. When you speak from need, he hears a request. When you speak from recognition, he feels seen. In that moment, he doesn't just see you as a woman. He sees you as a mirror, a doorway, a reflection of the part of himself he's never dared to look at. And that is the beginning of a kind of desire that does not fade easily. Perhaps you'll recognize this as you think back to past relationships. The man who stayed the longest didn't do so because you were perfect, but because at some point, you made him feel seen, and that is what kept him there. longer than any strategy ever could. True desire is not about conquering a body. It is about finding a space to lay down the armor, a place where nothing needs to be proven. And if you can create that space, you won't need to chase. He will come to you on his own. This first part is only the doorway. The truth is, desire doesn't come from technique. It comes from presence. And from here, we step into the next chapter, how mental nicknames can awaken that longing, not through tactics, but through the way you truly see him. Have you ever been with someone and felt like you had to hide a part of yourself? Like you had to act a certain way, be softer, more cheerful, even a little weaker, just to hold their attention? It's an exhausting feeling, like playing a role in your own life. And yet, strangely enough, we often repeat this habit in relationships. We believe that if we're sweet enough, well-behaved enough, if we say the right thing at the right time, then a man will stay. But there's a truth most people don't realize. Men don't stay because you play the part well. They stay when they feel they can be themselves around you. Deep desire doesn't arise when a man is praised for surface things, his success, his muscles, or his polished behavior. True desire awakens when he senses that he doesn't need to defend himself, prove himself, or become a perfect version of something else. In your presence, he can breathe. He can take off the mask the world has forced him to wear. Carl Jung once spoke about the shadow, the part of us we refuse to see. The shadow is everything the individual refuses to acknowledge about themselves. Every man carries shadows he hasn't faced yet. Anger, fear, vulnerability. The world demands he be strong, rational, in control. But it's only when he meets a woman who doesn't try to fix him, who doesn't judge or confine him, that real longing begins. Because in that moment he feels, here, I don't have to hide anymore. But there's a common misconception. Many women believe that to make a man open up, they must expose their own vulnerability to the point of dependence. We confuse being vulnerable with being needy. Vulnerability is when you're honest with your emotions. Neediness is when you make someone else responsible for your insecurities. And men feel that difference instantly. Imagine two moments. In one, a woman looks at her man with teary eyes and says, I don't know what I'd do without you. I need you here, or I'll fall apart. What the man hears isn't love, it's pressure. He hears the voice of lack. But in another moment, same situation, the woman looks into his eyes, gently smiles, and says, I admire how you stay calm when everything's falling apart. There's something in your presence that makes me feel safe, even when the world is in chaos. Do you feel the difference? The first is need. The second is recognition. In the second, he doesn't feel demanded. He feels seen. And in that moment, desire is no longer just physical. It becomes a fire within his identity. Deep desire happens when a man feels seen for both his strength and his unfinished parts. He doesn't have to be a hero. He doesn't need to explain or prove anything. He just needs to show up, and you notice him. That is the real secret. I remember a small story. A woman once told me about her boyfriend. He was a quiet man, often silent during conflict. She used to think that silence meant indifference, coldness. Then one day, during an argument, instead of pushing him, she simply placed her hand gently on his shoulder and said, You don't have to say anything right now. Just knowing you're here is enough. He looked at her for a long time, eyes glistening. Later, he told her that was the first time he felt he didn't have to prove himself to be accepted. And from that moment on, their love deepened. Deep desire doesn't come from needing each other. It comes from truly seeing each other. It's not born from pleading words, but from quiet presence. And do you realize, it's the moment you stop trying to hold on, stop trying to prove yourself, that you become most magnetic. A woman who knows how to sit in stillness, who knows how to see and listen without rushing to fix, is the one who awakens the deepest desire. It may sound simple, but to do this, you need deep inner strength. You must learn how to sit strong within yourself, so your vulnerability doesn't turn into dependence. When you know how to hold yourself, only then can you open your heart without turning someone else into your crutch. And when a man feels that, he stays not because you need him, but because you chose him. Maybe you've had a moment like that, when someone didn't do much, didn't say much, but by simply being there, they made you feel safe. That is true power. And deep down, men also long to be the one who brings that feeling to someone else. Before we move on to the next part, where I'll share exactly how to awaken the first masculine archetype, the natural protector. I want to pause here. If you've ever experienced what I just described, if there was ever a moment in your life when you felt truly seen without needing to pretend, share it in the comments. I would love to read it, and I believe others will see themselves in your story too. If this spoke to you, don't forget to hit like. That one small click can help more people hear this message and perhaps find themselves in it. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share the video. Sometimes just one share can change how someone sees love, because in the end, we all long for something simple to be seen and to be loved not for what we do, but for who we are. Every man carries within him a very ancient impulse. It doesn't come from modern social rules or anything he learned from books. It's an instinct, something resting quietly beneath the surface, waiting to be awakened. It is the protector instinct. Picture this. It's evening. A couple is walking down a quiet street. The streetlights cast a dim yellow glow, and the silence feels almost still. Suddenly, in the distance, a stranger appears. Something about his posture is off, a little unsettling. The woman doesn't panic, doesn't scream. She simply steps a little closer to the man beside her, gently touches his arm, looks into his eyes for a moment, and softly says, "I feel like nothing can happen to me when I'm with you." Just one simple sentence. No drama, no request. Yet in that moment, something shifts in the man's body. His shoulders square up. His gaze sharpens. He slows his steps to shield her. He doesn't need to be heroic. He just needs to be there. What matters is that he feels his protector instinct has been seen not as a duty, but as a gift. Every man longs for that feeling, that his presence matters, that his strength isn't seen as a threat, but as a source of safety. Yet this is rarely spoken aloud. Society tells men they need to succeed, to perform, to win. But deep down, they yearn to hear something simple. You make me feel safe. There's a big difference between demanding protection and recognizing that it's already being given. When a woman says, "I can't do anything without you. I need you to protect me," a man hears a cry for help. He feels forced into becoming a shield, and sometimes that feels heavy. But when she says, "I admired how you handled that," calm and strong, he doesn't hear a demand. He hears recognition. And that's what ignites desire, not from lust, but from the deepest place of masculine identity. I remember another story. A woman once shared that during a trip, their car broke down in the middle of a remote mountain road. She was worried, imagining the worst. But her man calmly stepped out, checked the engine, and figured out how to call for help. After it was over, she looked at him, smiled, and said, "It was admirable how you handled everything without losing control. There's something in your energy that calms even when everything's burning." She said he stayed quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at her with a pride she had never seen before. It's in moments like these that men feel not just desired, but deeply seen. Desire doesn't come from weakness that needs saving, but from trust in his strength as something precious within the space you share. Carl Jung once wrote about the transcendent function, the human ability to rise above oneself when we see our reflection in another. When a woman doesn't force, doesn't beg, but simply recognizes, she becomes the mirror that awakens the masculine essence within him, stirring the desire to fully live that truth. What's powerful is this. You don't need danger or dramatic moments to awaken the protector instinct. It can happen in everyday life, where even the smallest details become sparks. One day, when you feel uneasy in a strange place, just gently take his hand and say, "Just having you here is enough," and you'll see how he changes. Or, after a conversation where he defends you with his words, sets a boundary clearly, you look at him and whisper, "I liked how you set boundaries. It was firm, but elegant." These small sentences are keys that unlock deep desire. Men don't just listen with their ears. They listen with their bodies, their eyes, their breath. When he feels your recognition, he starts to show up differently. He becomes more thoughtful, more attuned to the smallest details. He hands you his jacket before you say you're cold. He makes plans that ensure your safety. Even in the way he touches you, his hands become steady, almost saying, "You belong in this safe place." But here's an important distinction. Many women mistakenly believe that to awaken a man's protector instinct, they need to play the role of someone helpless. They pretend to be clumsy, exaggerate their fragility, or even turn themselves into a burden. That doesn't awaken his instinct. it drains him. True strength lies in this. I can take care of myself, but with you, I feel lighter. That isn't weakness. It's a powerful choice. A friend of mine once said, "What made me fall in love with her wasn't that she needed me. It was that she trusted me." I'm not a hero, but when she looked at me like that, I wanted to become one. That's the difference. When you awaken the protector instinct through trust and recognition, a man doesn't feel used. He feels chosen. Deep desire is born from that, from a man sensing that, with you, he is loved, not just for what he does, but for who he island. And when he believes his strength has value, he wants to give more. He wants to stay longer. He wants to commit with his whole being. The world out there teaches men to win. But a wise woman knows that she doesn't need to wait for grand victories to show him he matters. Because in everyday moments, when he grips the steering wheel during a storm, when he calmly speaks a word that diffuses tension, when he simply stands beside you in silence that is enough for you to whisper, "I see you." And there is no deeper desire than to be seen like that. There are some men you cannot tame, cannot tie down, and cannot fit into any mold. They are like wild flames, never still within a hearth, never confined by walls. They are free, intense, creative, sometimes untamed. And it is this untamable nature that draws many women in with deep fascination, while also exhausting others who try too hard to hold on. You may have met a man like this. When he speaks of his dreams, his eyes blaze, his voice rolls like a wave of fire. He might talk about a wild project no one believes in, or a journey no one else dares to take. Others might shake their heads, calling him reckless, unrealistic. But you feel something different. Even when you don't fully understand what he's chasing, your heart beats faster, because within him is something rare, raw vitality. And a man like this only truly opens when he meets a woman who doesn't try to extinguish his fire. I remember a moment. A man sat across from her, passionately describing a new idea. His words were rapid, his eyes glowing, his hands in constant motion. The woman beside him didn't interrupt, didn't try to pull him back to earth with cautious advice. She listened, and when he finally paused, she looked at him with a gaze both admiring and daring, and said, "There's something in you that never gives up, and that turns me on." He fell silent. Because most people in his life had said things like, "Be careful," or "Don't take such big risks," or "Is that even possible?" But she was different. She didn't try to control. She didn't judge. She saw the fire, and instead of putting it out, she fed it with recognition. And in that moment, a desire rose in him, not the desire to conquer her, but to offer something of himself. Jung once wrote that the journey of individuation is the process of breaking free from the shadows of societal expectations to become truly oneself. The untamable man is someone already walking that path. He no longer lives to please. He lives to fully exist. And for that reason, he only stays with a woman who is free enough to walk beside him, not lock him in a cage. The danger is that many women, out of fear of losing him, try to tame him. They want him to be less wild, less risky, less intense, to make the relationship feel more stable. But to a man like this, stability is not what he seeks. He doesn't want a golden cage. He wants a companion strong enough to stand in front of his fire without fear. I remember another moment I once witnessed. A couple was in a heated argument. He spoke with fire, eyes blazing, voice echoing. Anyone else might have fallen silent from fear or responded with anger. But she just looked at him, no trembling, no shrinking. She let him pour out his fire, then calmly said, "I know I'm not easy, but neither are you, and that's why this makes sense." He burst out laughing, the tension melting from his shoulders. In that moment, he saw she wasn't an enemy or a victim. She was a partner ready to dance, even when the rhythm turned wild. That is how you awaken desire in an untamable man, not through control, but through parallel freedom. Not by trying to make him safer, but by showing him that you are strong enough to walk with his fire. But there's a trap many fall into. Some women believe they must chase his storm, become a shadow that follows him, completely dependent. But that only dims their allure. A free man is not looking for someone behind him. He's looking for someone who stands beside him. He doesn't choose the one who agrees with everything. He chooses the one with enough fire to challenge him. Picture another scene. He's just finished sharing a dream he's pouring his soul into. You don't rush to give advice. You don't respond with skepticism. You look him in the eyes, silent until he finishes, then softly say, "There's something in you that won't bow, and that challenges me. I don't want to change you. I want to see you in your fullest expression." Those words don't just touch him. They invite him to bring the wildest part of himself forward, because now he feels safe to be fully who he island. The untamable man only stays when choosing you doesn't mean betraying himself. And that means you must not try to contain him. Let him leave when he needs space. Let him burn when he needs to burn. And when he returns, all you need to do is look at him in a way that says, "I'm here." That is not a strategy. That is the strength of a woman who tends her own flame, and therefore can walk alongside another's. I once heard a man like this say, "What drew me to her wasn't that she chased me. It was that she wasn't afraid of me. I explode. I burn. I rage. But she didn't try to smother the fire. She looked at me as if to say, 'I want to see you as you are,' and that made me want to stay." In Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung wrote, "I am not interested in a good person. I'm interested in a whole person." The untamable man seeks the same. He's not looking for the perfect, obedient, easy-to-handle woman. He's looking for someone whole, someone who can live with both her light and her darkness, someone who loves her own fire and isn't afraid of his. For this kind of man, desire is not just physical. It is the desire to be seen in his most intense, raw form without being tamed. When you have the courage to stand in the heat of your own fire, you become the mirror that shows him freedom doesn't have to mean loneliness. And only then will he want to offer that freedom back to you. Not all men burn like fire. Some are like mountains, silent, solid, steady. They speak little, but their presence alone is enough to calm everything around them. This is the kind of man who doesn't need to shout to be noticed, who doesn't need dramatic gestures to prove his worth. He simply shows up, and the world naturally adjusts its rhythm to his. You may have met a man like this. He's not the loudest in the room. When people argue, he stays quiet, simply observing. When chaos breaks out, he doesn't panic, doesn't react too quickly. And that very stillness holds a power few recognize. Many mistake it for indifference or coldness. But in truth, his silence is a kind of strength, an energy field that makes those beside him feel anchored. A woman once told me that during a difficult time, she cried for hours beside her boyfriend. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer advice, didn't try to cheer her up. He just sat there quietly, his eyes calm as they watched her. And when she finally stopped, exhausted, he held her close and whispered, "You don't need to understand everything today. Just breathe. I'm here." And in that moment, she felt something no words of comfort could ever provide peace. This is the secret of the still and stillness archetype. His magnetism doesn't come from noise, but from quiet strength. He doesn't dominate with force. He steadies with presence. Carl Jung once wrote in Psychology and Alchemy, "A strong man is not one who dominates others, but one who masters himself." This kind of man doesn't seek to control the outside world because he has learned to master his own. What awakens desire in him is not dramatic pleas or fiery emotions, but a woman perceptive enough to see the strength in his stillness. Society often praises men when they fight, when they conquer, when they roar, but few pause to say, "I admire the way you stay calm when everything falls apart." And when such a truth is spoken with sincerity, it sparks a deep desire within him. Picture a simple scene. A woman comes home after a long, stressful day. Her voice shakes as she speaks, her eyes filled with tears. The man sits there, listening quietly. He doesn't offer cliches. He doesn't interrupt with solutions. He just lets her release everything. And when she's done, drained, he gently places a hand on her shoulder and says, "You're a rock to me, but I want you to know that I can be the same for you." That sentence, simple yet grounded, is not fueled by lust, but by a desire to offer sanctuary. The power of this archetype lies in presence, not performance. He doesn't need to prove his worth through victories, because he knows true strength is standing still when everything else is falling apart. And when a woman sees that, when she names that unseen power, something stirs within him. Desire awakens not through urgency, but through recognition. But like all archetypes, there is a trap. Many women misunderstand his stillness as distance. They push, saying, "What are you thinking?" Or, Why don't you say something? They try to pull him out of his quiet space, turning it into an interrogation. And in that moment, the connection breaks. The man of steel and silence cannot open up in chaos. He only opens when his stillness is respected. A wise woman doesn't shatter that silence, she steps into it. She may gently place her hand on his, smile softly, and say, "I don't need an answer right now. It's enough for me to know you're here." Words like these don't just soothe him, they make him feel truly seen. And that is when desire rises, not from pressure, but from understanding. I once met a couple who had been together for over 15 years. The wife said the reason she loved her husband wasn't for the grand things he did. What kept her by his side was how he sat with her when her world was falling apart. "He's not the man who speaks first," she told me, "but when he does, the world rearranges itself." Desire, in the presence of a man of steel and stillness, does not erupt like wildfire. It burns like glowing embers, steady, lasting, and quietly warming. The woman doesn't need to shout for his attention. She only needs to sit with him in silence, touch him without demand, be near him without asking. In that space, intimacy becomes a form of deep, enduring desire. Jung once said, "What you deny submits you. What you accept transforms you." The man of steel and silence lives this truth. He doesn't reject emotion. He doesn't run from his shadows. He accepts them and transforms them into presence. And when a woman knows how to honor that, she doesn't just make him feel wanted. She makes him feel transformed. The appeal of this archetype lies in its simplicity. You don't need grand gestures to awaken his desire. You only need to name what's often overlooked. "The way you stay steady when I'm falling apart makes me feel safe. Your silence grounds me more than any words could." When spoken with truth, such words etch themselves into his memory, becoming the roots of lasting connection. True desire isn't always about burning passion. Sometimes it's the rare peace found in a noisy world. And when a man of steel and stillness meets a woman who can see that value, no drama is needed, only presence, only recognition, and the quiet power of an unspoken truth that says, "I see you." There is something that most men, even the most mature, still cannot resist. Mystery, but not the kind of mystery created through mind games, like deliberately going silent to spark curiosity or pretending to be distant to make him chase you. True mystery doesn't come from manipulation, it comes from depth. Imagine an evening. A man stands in the kitchen, preparing dinner. There's no music, no noise. He's focused on every detail, chopping vegetables, tasting, seasoning. A woman walks in, not rushing to speak, not trying to interrupt. She simply stands in the doorway, watching him a little longer than usual. Then she walks over, leans close, and whispers, "I love how you care about the little things. You're one of those who show up, not one who just makes promises." Then she walks away without waiting for a reply. That moment lingers in his memory, not because of the compliment, but because of the unexpectedness, the feeling that within her silence lived an entire world yet to be revealed. True mystery is just like that, it doesn't hide, but it doesn't expose everything either. It leaves space, layers, something to be discovered slowly. Carl Jung once wrote in The Soul and Its Reality, "Only that which has not yet become conscious can be projected." A man is often drawn to the parts of himself he hasn't yet recognized, the parts he sees reflected in a woman. When you show up with quiet depth and mystery, you become a mirror for what he hasn't yet seen in himself. And that's where desire begins. I remember a friend telling me about a woman he once loved. She never spoke too much about herself, not because she was hiding anything, but because she didn't feel the need to rush. When they were together, there were moments when she simply sat in silence, her eyes gazing off, as if looking at something far away. At first, he found it odd. Later, he said, "Those were the moments I couldn't walk away. I felt there was so much I hadn't yet uncovered, and I wanted to stay and find out." That's the allure of mystery. It doesn't close a story. It opens questions. It doesn't give everything away. It invites discovery. A mysterious woman doesn't build walls. She simply keeps space for herself. She's not afraid to be seen, but she doesn't need to be fully understood all at once. And that is what makes a man want to stay, not to possess her, but to journey with her through the unfolding. Desire is nurtured by curiosity. A man won't stay captivated by something he believes he's fully grasped, but he won't be able to let go of a woman who continues to reveal herself in layers. Mystery is not a tactic. It's the truth that there's more to you than you reveal. Picture another moment. He's sharing a difficult memory from his past. You don't interrupt with stories of your own. You simply listen with deep, steady eyes. When he finishes, instead of commenting, you quietly take his hand and smile. In that silence, he feels not only heard, but held by something unspoken. And that unspoken energy becomes the very source of mystery that draws him closer. A woman who lives with mystery doesn't rush in love. She doesn't try to prove herself. She doesn't need to answer every question. She's at ease leaving space. She's comfortable letting a man enter her world layer by layer. And it is that slowness that makes desire last. Jung said that only what is unconscious can be projected. Mystery is not something foreign. It is the doorway to a man's unconscious. When he doesn't fully understand you, but senses you with his intuition, he begins to fall into a deeper form of desire. He wants to stay not because you gave everything away, but because you've given him a path to explore. A woman once told me that she never tried to be mysterious. She just didn't feel the need to over-explain herself. When her boyfriend asked why she made a certain decision, instead of listing all her reasons, she simply said, "It just felt right." That brief answer made him curious, but it also earned his respect, because in that response, he sensed something solid. She lived in truth with her feelings, and he had yet to fully discover her. The power of the quiet and mysterious archetype doesn't lie in secrecy. It lies in depth of presence. It's like standing before a still lake calm on the surface, but you know there's an entire world beneath. And that awareness makes a man want to dive deeper. The danger is that some women confuse mystery with pretense. They try to manufacture distance, use silence as a tactic, or withhold information to spark intrigue. But that's not mystery, that's strategy. And every strategy eventually shows itself. True mystery is not something you do. It's something you are. It comes from being at peace with not being fully understood, from being comfortable not being defined right away. Remember, the most alluring kind of mystery isn't when you hide. It's when you're so true to yourself that you don't feel the need to reveal everything. You leave space, and that space becomes the most powerful invitation of all. In a world full of noise, silence itself is already magnetic. But when that silence carries mystery, it becomes an invitation no man can resist. He doesn't just desire you, he desires the journey with you. He doesn't want to possess you, he wants to discover you. And that is the secret to a connection that doesn't just ignite, it endures. In the end, after all the archetypes, after all the ways desire can be awakened, we return to one simple truth. The most lasting attraction doesn't come from strategy, and it doesn't come from learned techniques. It comes from presence. Think back to the last time you truly felt connected to someone. It may not have been when they said sweet things, or when they did something grand. Maybe it was just a moment when they sat beside you in silence, and you knew they were fully there, not running, not pretending. It was that presence that made your heart skip a beat. Men are the same. Whether he is the natural protector, the untamable force, the man of steel and stillness, or the one who holds deep mystery at the core, they all want the same thing: to be seen, not for how they look, not for what they've achieved, but to be seen in their truest essence. And that can only happen when the woman before them has already seen herself, because you cannot truly see another if you've never dared to face your own shadows. You cannot recognize a man's strength if you still deny your own. You cannot hold his hand in the storm if you still tremble in the winds of your own. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." It is the choice to become whole that makes a person truly magnetic. And when you enter a relationship from that place of wholeness, you don't need a man to fill a void. You choose him because you want to, not because you need to. A man may be captivated by beauty. He may be drawn to intelligence. He may be pulled in by charm. But for him to stay, for him to truly commit, it takes something more. He needs a woman in whose presence he feels free. Free from judgment. Free from being tamed. Free from having to prove himself. Simply free to be who he island. A man once told me about the woman he had been with for over 20 years. He said, "She never tried to change me, not because I was perfect, but because she knew how to see me whole, and that made me always want to be a better version of myself." He paused and smiled. When a man with a soul meets a woman with a soul, all games end. And that's the truth. When two souls meet, there are no more games, no more tactics, only recognition, only choice. Not a choice made from fear or lack, but from freedom. Presence in love is not just physical proximity. It is the presence of the soul. It's when you can sit next to your man without having to say anything, without having to play a role, and still feel deeply connected. It's when you know he doesn't need you to survive, and you don't need him to be complete, but you still choose to walk together. This is the final truth. True, lasting, and deep desire only exists when it is nurtured in freedom. When two people don't stay out of fear of being alone, but because the presence of the other makes the world feel fuller. And perhaps that is the lesson we all need to remember. You don't need to become everything to be loved. You only need the courage to be yourself. A woman who is unafraid of her light and unafraid of her shadows. A woman who no longer seeks validation because she has already found it within. When you enter a relationship from that place, you stop asking, "How do I keep him?" Instead, you begin to ask, "How do I remain myself while being with him?" And it is that question that makes a man stay. Because in the end, love is not about possession. Love is about presence. And in that presence, desire is no longer a game. It becomes a quiet, eternal flame. Perhaps all we ever call love or desire is simply an excuse. The deepest thing we long for, from the very beginning, is not each other's bodies, but to be seen, to be touched by a gaze, by presence, by the silent acknowledgement that says, "You are there, and I am here." Maybe one day, beauty will fade. Every tactic will grow old. But true presence will remain, like a flame that never goes out. And if there is anything that keeps men and women coming back to one another, again and again, it might just be this: to be free, but still chosen. To be seen, but never changed. To stay not because we need to, but because we want to. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this story. If this message touched your heart, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss the next journey we take together. Your support means the world to me.